People still think that AI is coming. They don't appreciate that it's already here. If we want to move organizations from reactive operations to proactive operations, that level of trust means that we really need to trust the agentic AI capabilities. Trust is a really big one, that if the people that deploy the technology or the people that use the technology don't trust its ability to deliver whatever they need, then we're really going to struggle. I think it's one of those consultancy type answers. It depends. So when someone says to me, our organisation's ready to adopt AI, I say it's a little bit like asking yourself, am I ready to lose weight? It's probably a better answer to use, but that's the one I like to use. And you have to think, well, am I just following others? Am I losing weight because it's fashionable? Or am I losing weight because I really want to lose weight? Do I have an ambition? Do I have a goal? And also, are there things to distract me? Have I got a cupboard full of chocolate that is going to really be unhelpful in the pursuit of trying to lose weight? Have I got plans? Have I got metrics? So all of these things come into play with AI. I think a lot of other people will say, a lot's got to do with data quality, but for me, it's the bigger picture. It's understanding why you want to adopt AI. So what's the reason? What's the version of losing weight? Do we want to be more efficient? Do we want to offer better experiences to end users? Do we want to save money? There could be a multitude of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be one of those reasons that I just try to spit out. But I think it's important that an organisation just isn't adopting AI. So that's why I say it depends, because it's probably easy enough to get out the checkbook or the modern day equivalent and invest in new technology. But making that technology successful is a completely different ballgame. So I'm sticking with it depends, because not every organisation is going to be ready, and not every organisation is going to have the right mindset, for want of a better phrase, such that they can get the most out of the opportunity that is AI. In terms of the challenges that IT departments or IT organisations are facing relative to running with IT service delivery and support, for me, there are some old and some new challenges. Some have never gone away and probably will never go away. So, the heavy focus on cost is one of them. Security is one that's been with us for a long time, but it is far more heightened. But I think there are a lot of, not necessarily new ones, but ones that are becoming far more important than they were. So, for instance, ticket volumes from a service desk perspective. We're probably seeing more tickets than ever, and it doesn't help that technology is more important than ever when it comes to business operations. So that is not only a challenge in terms of volume, but also the challenge in terms of the required velocity, the speed with which we need to be handling those tickets. Employee experience is another one that's, I say it's relatively new. I remember talking about it 12 years ago, so it's not actually new, but it's definitely new in terms of IT service management trends in particular, and making sure that we're not just providing services because we can, or we're not just making technology work because it isn't working, but we're trying to make employees or customers or whoever, whichever business stakeholder it is, more productive than they currently are with technology. So experience is definitely one that is a big challenge for organisations. I think we're going to see far more challenges related to staff as well. I think it's always been somewhat of an issue, but staff retention, staff well-being, staff upskilling, particularly in the context of AI, all of these are pertinent from a challenges perspective. And I guess I've touched on it slightly. Value is another one. Again, for 10, 15 years, in fact, I've been asking the question, how do we quantify the value that we offer as a IT service provider, whether it be to internal employees or to the employees in other organisations in a service provider perspective. And we still haven't cracked that tough nut, unfortunately. Employee experience can help with it, but defining what value is a tricky starting point, and many organisations struggle to get past it. And then finally, we probably can't talk about where IT operations is from a challenges perspective without calling out the AI adoption challenges, and we'll cover more of those as we talk through this. But just picking up AI as a new technology and implementing it or deploying it probably isn't going to work. There's so much that needs to be done to make sure that AI in your organisation is successful and not just another element that will ultimately become part of technology debt. I see two sides to AI's use in IT organisations. The first is the vendor view or the technology view, and the initial money or the initial bets have been placed on virtual agents, virtual assistants for staff rather than end users, and also intelligent workflow automation. So things like automatically triaging incoming tickets. That's a big one where AI can help. But there's also the customer view that we shouldn't forget, and that again, it can be done in multiple ways. But for me, a simple way is to look at a process-based view or a practice-based view if you're looking at ITIL 4. So incident management, service request management, knowledge management, problem management, they're probably the four big areas at the moment. Measurement and reporting as well is big, and that can apply to any of the things that I've said already. But one of the things that I think is worth considering is where the technology is going, because a lot of the early adoption has been related to the early inclusion of AI. For me, it's difficult to pin down one myth related to AI at the moment, and I see two as being most pertinent. The first is that people still think that AI is coming. They don't appreciate that it's already here. Having just done some work with PeopleCert, the level of AI, not adoption, but AI inclusion in IT service management tools or platforms is actually quite remarkable. So I think we need to understand that it's here already. Whether people are using it is a different matter, but it's definitely not coming. It's already here. The second is that, well, it's an assumption rather than a myth, maybe, that AI offers a clean slate, that we do what we often do with new technology, that we think it's going to solve a lot of the many ills that we have with IT service delivery or IT support. And I think we need to be quite honest and recognise that we need to have the ITSM basics in place in order to fully succeed with AI. And we also need to do things like employ organisational change management to ensure that we aren't just doing yet another technology change. We're looking at the processes and we're looking at the people change as well. And we need to be cognizant of the fact that just employing or adopting technology, hasn't worked for us in the past, and it's probably not going to work for us in the future. When looking at Agentic AI, most people will call out the fact that the technology is autonomous. They'll use phrases like no human in the loop. Yes, it's a big part of Agentic AI, and maybe a way in which we probably overhype Agentic AI, in that there normally is a human in the loop if it's only just setting up that Agentic AI use cases. But for me, I think the biggest difference that we should be calling out right now is the level of trust that's required. People talk about AI and trust anyway, but Agentic AI, if we want to move organizations from reactive operations to proactive operations. That level of trust means that we really need to trust the agentic AI capabilities. So I would call out that as being the biggest difference. Yeah, autonomy, yeah, I can live with that, but we really have to focus on the level of trust that's required. So, if it were me, I would make that my key differentiator. As already mentioned, trust is a really big one. That if the people that deploy the technology or the people that use the technology don't trust its ability to deliver whatever they need, then we're really going to struggle. But for me, it's a bigger barrier than just trust, because trust is almost at the end of the line or at the end of a chain. I see three parts, and this has been not necessarily proven, but it comes up a lot in surveys, that when you look at the correlations between those organizations that are succeeding and their answers to questions and those that are not as successful, should we say, what becomes clear is that there's a three-part chain, that in order to get the trust, you first need to invest in AI. And that investment in AI is the only way to really get the success you need in AI, which ultimately breeds that trust. Now, I'm calling it a chain. It's probably more of a circle or a cycle that goes round, that the trust breeds more investment, which breeds more success, which breeds more trust. And we need to be on that wheel, that we can't expect trust to come from nowhere. We can't really expect success to come without the investment. So, we need those three things, and we need to work out, we need to understand the way that they affect each other, and that trust eventually comes from both the success and the initial investment and then the ongoing investment. I think a picture would have said more than 1,000 words there, but hopefully it helped. In terms of low-hanging fruit and your organization's readiness for AI adoption, one of the lowest risk opportunities is going to relate to service request management, because for most service requests, it's not going to be a life or death situation if something doesn't go as it should do. And it also gives the opportunity to prove a lot of the potential use cases of Agentic AI in terms of not only understanding the need, but also bringing in other capabilities. So for instance, something like software deployment. If I need software added to one of my devices, Agentic AI should A, know who I am, B, know the device I'm using, C, know the software, and also whether I'm entitled to it based on my current role, whether it's something that is pre-authorized for people in given roles, or whether it needs a third party to actually get involved and authorize it, and then involve the technology that's required to deploy it. So the technology should be able to just deal with that and involve no humans ideally. And as I said, it should be relatively low risk. In terms of the governance or risk or security aspects of using AI within your organization, I think one of the first things I like to say is that most tools will come with some form of AI guardrails, and they're a great addition to the tool, but they're only a small part of what's needed. That when you look at something like the industry is calling AI governance as being a subset of IT governance, as being a subset of enterprise governance, that it's important to understand how much actually changes with the introduction of AI, and therefore the impact on AI governance is probably far larger than many actually think. I mean, it's sometimes even just the basics of, just understanding the risks of AI, that whether you want to sit in a room and brainstorm it or use ChatGPT or a colleague to work out, what the risks are, you'll probably be surprised at, how many risks there actually are. And then secondly, we need to realise that traditional IT governance is probably too slow, for want of a better phrase, relative to AI adoption. And not only do we need to change IT governance to address the many risks of AI, we also need to change IT governance and also enterprise governance to keep up with the speed of AI and the speed of AI change. And another thing that's probably worth calling out is accountability. It's an easy one to miss. And one of the things that I've not seen any data on yet, and I'd love to see, is whether we as humans are more forgiving of other humans that make mistakes in the context of our work life versus how we feel about technology making mistakes. And all of these things, I feel as though I'm waffling a bit, but there are so many things that need to be brought into play from a governance perspective in particular, that it will be easy for organisations to think that it is just an extension or an add-on to the status quo. And we're already seeing organisations being not necessarily derailed, but they're certainly finding themselves in positions that they don't want to be in because they haven't invested sufficiently in AI governance. And it has been a big, not necessarily a big play, but a big ambition. Ambition might be too strong a word, but organisations have understood that they really do need to understand what AI governance looks like and where they need to invest to bring their current governance capabilities close to where they need to be from an AI perspective. But I'm still not convinced that that ambition has turned into the necessary action as much as it needs to do. So in terms of how Agentic AI will affect IT managers and their teams in the next few years, there are multiple facets to this. A lot of people will talk about the need to work with the AI, to be amenable to the use of AI, to understand how AI works. But there's also an oversight role. Some people call it AI supervisors, maybe AI managers might be better, that allows us as people to ensure that the AI is doing what it should be doing, that phrases such as AI drift are coming into play now, that you set up the AI and it works perfectly, but over time it might not necessarily deliver the outcomes that you expect it to. So we as human beings, at least in the short term, have an opportunity and also a responsibility to ensure that the AI is doing what it's meant to be doing. And also when it's not doing what it's meant to be doing, well, hopefully preventing it from doing that. But there's also a relationship management type role that AI, particularly if it's serving people and it's not serving them in the way that it should be serving them, there is probably some smoothing over that needs to be done. And, as people with the innate empathy that hopefully we have, we're better suited to do that, that we are hopefully going to see a role for people in, I suppose you could almost say it is a governance role or even a stewardship role when it comes to AI, that we want to make sure that we've employed this technology for better business operations and better business outcomes, but it's probably going to be up to us again in the short term, maybe not longer term, to ensure that the AI is delivering against what we need it to do. Looking forward with Agentic AI, I think one of the most important things we should be thinking about now is that we want Agentic AI to really turn the dial from the reactive mode that we've been in for a long time from an IT perspective to a more proactive role. And it's just not proactive in terms of being better at fixing issues. I think there's a danger that we could take that route in the same way as we've added automation to processes in the past. It speeds things up, but it doesn't necessarily improve things beyond that. The AI and Agentic AI in particular gives us the opportunity to move beyond trying to fix things more quickly. It allows us to be in more of a preventative mode. And that's where I see Agentic AI going. If we think about it right, if we act on it right, that we are looking less at using Agentic AI to fix things, and we're looking more at Agentic AI to improve things. I think the biggest piece of advice I can give to an IT leader relative to AI or Agentic AI is that it's not optional, that it's not something that you can choose to avoid, that, firstly, from a competitive advantage perspective, you're going to realise that your organisation will struggle without the use of Agentic AI. And secondly, there's probably going to be pressure from above, that in the same way that 2023 was the year that ChatGPT was, it reached board level attention and interesting questions were being asked about, why aren't we using AI? A similar thing will happen with Agentic AI. And not only do we need to appreciate that it's not optional, we also need to realise that we almost need to temper some of our initial excitement and ensure that we have the right AI governance in place, particularly because we want these autonomous AI agents to be trusted. And trust is something that takes a long time to build up, and your IT organisation might have a good trust level, for want of a better phrase, and the last thing you need is for the technology to degrade that level of trust. So, make sure that the initial excitement or the ongoing excitement isn't at the expense of sufficient AI governance.